Hi, and thank you for joining me for today's 30 Days of Sketches with Christie's Beautiful Life Series 18. Today's sketch is day 12 and it's been designed by Sonetta Seekins. You can see it in the top left-hand corner there. Now, this is a double page layout. I don't do double page layouts generally, so I've actually shrunk this sketch down to one, and I've definitely taken inspiration rather than followed it exactly. So I'm taking inspiration from the strip down the right hand side with the two photos on, and then the one photo on the left hand side. But I've flipped the sketch. I've mirrored it so that my two photos are on the left and then the single photo is on the right. So these three photos are Amelia on her 4th birthday. I just snapped some photos of her before the family came over, and she's holding up her 4 fingers to show how old she is, and I just thought it was so cute. I really wanted to document this. So I'm using Joyful Notes from American Crafts, and I just thought this was perfect because it is a celebrations collection. And I've mainly got the 6x8 paper pad, and I had that one long strip of the navy blue floral, which goes really well with the little dress that Amelia is wearing. So that's what I started with as my strip for the photos to sit on, and then I've just added loads more layers behind it. So I am faffing about a little bit trying to work out exactly how these layers are going to work together, but I've more or less got it there now. And then I'm going to create a smaller cluster on the right hand side with that small photo. So all these photos have been printed 2x3, so they're nice and small, but because they're such close-up photos, it works really nicely. You can still see all the detail. So I'm just trimming down a piece of paper to start this cluster on the right hand side. That's actually going to be turned into a tag. I'm just going to punch a hole in the top and that will become a tag shape. And then I've got this lovely floral piece, and then the Viewmaster reel, which is a nod to the floral wreath that Sonetta has in the original sketch. So I'm just going to go through, I won't make you watch all of this, but I'm just going to go through and distress all the edges of those pieces on the left hand side and then stick them back together again. This is me just trying to remember where they were. As per usual, I pulled them all up and distressed the edges and then couldn't quite remember how I had them. But I think I get them down more or less how they were initially, but I'm happy with the placement anyway. So I suppose that's all that matters really, isn't it? I do faff about a little bit here because I don't want any of the joins of the paper to join, if that makes sense. So I didn't want that blue script paper to be lined up with the navy blue paper behind it. So I do have to pull things about a little bit. I also want to make sure that I've got enough space for that cluster on the right hand side. So I'm having to pull things back a little bit and mess around, but I get there in the end. But yeah, it's a good job that I'm using ATG and not wet glue, because I would be making a real mess were that the case. So I decided that this cluster on the right hand side actually needs to move down the page a little bit, but first of all I'm just using a pencil to mark where this large block is going to sit on the page, because I do want to add a little bit of colour to my white paper in the background. So I'm going to come in with spun sugar and use that both with a brayer to create a watercolour effect, and then with one of my new Hey Little Magpie stencils, the scattered hearts, just to add a little bit of interest in that background. First of all, just getting those photos stuck down. I know that's where I want them to go, so there's no point in not sticking them down and risking losing them on my messy desk. So just checking that I'm happy with the positioning before I go ahead with the inking and stenciling. And I was just redoing that line because I don't know what had happened, but I'd thought I'd drawn well underneath the line of the papers, but the pencil mark was showing when I put them back. So just rubbing that out and trying again. So now moving on to the right hand cluster, I just want to get this together as well. So I'm distressing all the edges of that piece that's going to be the tag, and then sticking that Viewmaster reel on. That's cut from the Hey Little Magpie dies, just using craft cardstock. And then I've just pulled out that floral bit, as I said, and then this lovely banner that says I love you that's going to go at the bottom, and that creates a really nice cluster there. I will bring something else in due course, but for now this is how it's sitting. So when I've got those bits glued together, I can start working on the mixed media in the background. But I do enjoy creating clusters like this and then deciding where to put them afterwards. It just makes building the layout so much easier. almost there. I want to hide that hole on the Viewmaster reel, so I was just messing around a little bit with the placement. Again, that pencil line just gets in the way, so just rubbing that out and checking that I'm happy with the positioning. And now I'm coming in with the ink. So first of all, the spun sugar just watered down, so I'm just squidging some onto my mat, and then I'll use my water sprayer just to water that down slightly, and then my mini brayer to add it all around those pencil marks around the edges of where the paper's going to sit, and it just creates a watercolour effect. It's a very pale ink, this, and it doesn't have a huge amount of pigment, so I'm really trying to build it up to make sure that it does show around the edges there. You could use the packaging technique if you don't have a brayer. I just like the control that I have when I use a brayer to add the ink to my page. So making sure that I add some around that right hand cluster as well. So just bringing a little bit more in, tiny bit of water, just to try and get a little bit more of that pigment down. And just rolling it on. Almost there. You can see how that pigment's just added. And then with the final little bit left, I'm just going to use a tiny paintbrush and splatter, just to create some tiny little dots. You can barely see them in the background because it's such a pale colour, but it does show up, and it just does create that little bit more interest on the background. So just checking that I'm happy with the positioning, I'm going to add some wax twine to the top of that tag that I've created using the rectangle of paper. And this is just a salmon pink wax twine that I'm just going to thread through the top and then leave to trail down the left-hand side of this cluster. So here's that other piece that I said I was going to bring into the cluster. I had this doily sitting on my desk from the February embellishment kit from Hey Little Magpie, and the pink goes perfectly with the pinks in this collection. So I thought that would be a really nice addition. And again, another circle as a nod to that wreath that's in the centre of the sketch. So now coming in with my Scattered Heart stencil from Hey Little Magpie, and I'm just using one of our mini blending brushes just to blend through the stencil to create these hearts on the background. And I'm just going around the edge of the layout. I don't want them to come too far out onto the page, so you can see there just a tiny bit showing, and then bringing the stencil back in to create the rest. And just following that pencil line, just going slightly to the right hand side of the pencil line, and that gives me the results that I'm looking for. And these mini blending brushes are perfect for this sort of job because you're not going to stencil where you don't want it to go. So I've completely ignored the right hand side here, so I do come back with that stencil in due course. But I remembered I pulled out this lovely vintage looking lace from my collection. It's just an off-white cotton lace. So I'm just going to run that down the back of the pattern paper here, and that's going to make my left hand margin. I just wanted something of interest rather than butting the paper right the way up to the edge. So I'm going to seal this on the back with washi tape. I just want to get this stuck down first before I mess around sticking the lace over the back. And the reason that I fold it over to the back like that is so that it doesn't fray in my album. It just creates a neat edge. So here's the washi tape, just getting those bits stuck down. Trying not to let the paper hang over the edge of the page. And there we go. Now I realised when I'd stuck it down that it wasn't straight, so I have to pull it all up and mess around a little bit just to get that straight, but I get it there in the end, and then I can work on this right hand side. So I've decided it's going to come right down to the bottom of the page. So I'm just going to glue that down, and then I realise that I haven't added any stenciling, so I will rectify that in a second. And there's just enough room for that to sit on the right hand side without it touching those papers on the left. So just roughing up that long edge and getting the wax twine into position. And I'm just going to add a couple of dots to hold that wax twine in place. So now coming in with my stencil and that little brush again, and I'm just adding a few hearts just around the top edge, just to create a little bit of interest. I've already got the watered down ink there, so that's showing nicely. I just wanted a few hearts at that top bit. And taking some off the page. And now I'm going to come in with my title. So I'm using the foam stickers from this Joyful Notes collection, and I'm just going to write out "You are how old?" because Amelia's holding her hand up, showing her 4 fingers, so I just thought that was a cute title. So again, putting that title towards the top of the page above that right hand photo, because I've flipped the sketch, so it would have been above the left hand side on the sketch. And there it is, and then I'm just going to put the number 4 next to that bottom photo. So I want to add some journaling underneath that title, just a teeny tiny bit, just in my memory. Obviously this was almost 14 years ago. It's James and Amelia's birthday on Tuesday. They'll be 18, so my memory is fading a little bit, but it's still there strong enough. So now, before I do that journaling, I wanted to add some stitching details all the way down this left-hand 12-inch strip. So I'm poking holes so that I can do a whip stitch all the way up that page. So using the holes on the lace as a guide, I'm going through every other hole and then keeping the line of the stitch horizontal onto the paper, so it looks like this whip stitch is holding that paper in place. And again, using the same pink wax twine to do that. So now I've gone all the way up the page and just secured that on the back with some washi, just adding glue to, because I was quite frugal with the glue that I added to the paper, so just making sure that all that was stuck down. Now this is from the ephemera pack from the Joyful Notes collection. It's a lovely vellum flag. It's actually a tag. I hadn't realised, and the tag hole came out as I was gluing that down, but I just glued it back together and it was absolutely fine. And then I had this other piece that says happy birthday, and I wanted to add that to the bottom of the page. I just thought it finished it off nicely. It's the right colours. It's that gorgeous blue and gold. So that sits nicely at the bottom there. Just moving it around a little bit to make sure that I'm happy with the positioning. It's funny how these little things seem so important in the moment, don't they? And there's the journaling, and that's the layout done. Thank you so much for joining me. Do check the description box down below to see the playlist that people are adding their videos to. And other than that, I shall see you very soon. Bye.